Welcome to the Star Business Solutions 2021 webinar series, March 24, 2021. Just a few introductions and housekeeping issues before we get started. We will be recording this webinar, and a link to it will be sent to all attendees within 24 hours of the presentation's completion. Star Business Solutions has been around since the mid-90s, and we've been involved with quite a number of different ERP software systems and solutions over that time, and we still deal with several at the moment. We do have extensive manufacturing industry experience. Approximately 16 to 17% of our client base is in the manufacturing field, primarily in the job cost area or job lot area, and they use various software packages. So between our team here, we do have quite a level of diverse manufacturing experience. Over the course of the presentation, it's going to be a little bit difficult to answer your questions as we go. So what I'd like to encourage you to do is type in your questions as you think of them into the question or the comment area, and at the end, when we get to our Q&A session, we will be going through those questions and answering them as best that we can. So the more questions, the more interactive the event will be, and the more value it will be for yourselves. Today we'll be primarily talking about the MYOB Advanced Manufacturing Edition. Now obviously, in the time that we have allocated, we can't cover everything. We're going to do our best to give you a strong overview of the various areas, particularly the ones that we included in our invitation and notices on social media, etc. However, if there's an area that we haven't covered that you'd like to ask a question about, please feel free to put a question in the question section, and we'll try to address it as much as we can. Also, because of time restraints, we won't be able to delve too deeply into an overview of the MYOB Advanced product, because we don't have 8-10 hours worth of demonstration time to cover it more thoroughly. So please bear with us if there are areas that you'd like to hear about, but we haven't touched on. Of course, we're quite happy to give people a more extensive demonstration or discussion at some future time if you would like to hear from us. Basically, we'll be going through an overview of the manufacturing edition. Josh, our demo guy and demo expert, will be doing a demonstration of various aspects of the product, and at the end we will be doing a Q&A time. By way of introduction, my name's Norman Hall. I'm the Director of Marketing and co-owner of Star Business Solutions. Luckily for you, I won't be talking too much. We'll also have our General Manager of Sales, Josh Diffie, who will be handling most of the presentation and the demonstration. And we'll also have a guest panelist, being Grace Wong. Grace is a Channel Sales Associate for the Enterprise Division of MYOB, and she'll be joining us in for the Q&A session at the end.
Hi everyone.
Okay, over to Josh.
Thanks, Norman. To begin with, I thought I'd just give a quick couple of slides. I won't spend too much in the PowerPoint. I much prefer to be in the product, so to speak. But to give you a broad overview, the MYOB Advanced Manufacturing Edition is made up of a number of or 2 core modules and a couple of optional modules, which I'll be touching on shortly. So bill of materials and production are the 2 core modules that we'll spend most of the time in today, looking at both multi-level bill of materials with routing, activity-based costing, tracking overheads, labor, materials, etc. And through production, also the ability of tracking lot or serial or batch, depending on your industry and terminology, and also discussing the ability to do outside processing, so whether that be a vendor or a supplier doing part of your manufacturing cycle. The three optional modules that I thought I'd highlight today, the excuse me, material requirements planning, or MRP, which primarily is focused around sales and demand forecasting or master production schedules, and then telling you or suggesting what you should purchase, transfer, or produce. Two of the other optional modules, which we won't have time to cover today, but by all means we can organise a demonstration later if it is an area of interest, is the product configurator, which does allow you to have rule-based, on-the-fly products that integrate with sales and opportunities, and is great for more of a job shop, manufacture to order type business, where your each project or each bill of material is slightly different from the previous. And estimating is very similar in nature to the, I guess, product configurator. However, it is more around the ability to estimate and create bill of materials that can be used for ongoing production. So to give you a bit of an idea of the overall workflow of the manufacturing edition, I'm going to go through two main scenarios, which we'll be touching on shortly. But the first one is more of that make to order type business. So as we can see at the top, we have a customer. They'll create some form of sales order, whether that's coming through via an e-commerce platform, the customer portal, or over the phone or email. Those sales orders can directly create a production order, which can keep track of materials, labor, and what we refer to as moves. Alternatively, or in addition, we can also have MRP, or material requirements planning, suggest what we should purchase and manufacture based on those sales orders, as well as forecasts and production schedules. All right, so enough waffle from me. Let's jump into the product and look at a make to order scenario first. So MYOB Advanced, when you are in the with an MYOB Advanced, you will have a number of dashboard options. I've gone with a fairly high-level overview of my production, purchasing, and sales components. And from here, I can see my current open production orders at the top, maybe some cost split by types, or some trends on production orders created or costs and so on. So give you a broad view of the business. So we'll take a look at a bill of material. So we'll swing on into the first example I'm going to go with is the building of a computer specifically for a client. So this laptop goes through a couple of what we refer to as operations. So the first operation I've got set up is a soldering operation, or a soldering station, and that's assigned a work center. And the second one, or second operation, is what I've referred to as an assembly station. And each of those can have different materials. So one of the real handy parts of MYOB Advanced, especially for those that have production or manufacturing requirements that might take quite some time, you don't necessarily need all the parts right at the start. So you can put that into play as we go through. In this initial example, I won't be going through all the different options of doing labor against this production order. I have selected what's referred to as backflush. So this will simply use the labor that's on the estimate of this bill of material, rather than someone actually doing any form of clock on, clock off, or timesheet. That is available. If I was to look at my production order workspace for a brief second, I can do what we call clock entries or labor transactions, as well as the MYOB Advanced app, which is both iOS and Android friendly, will allow for that same clock on, clock off feature. If I was to have a look at just one of these workstations, and we'll look at the soldering station to begin with. You do have the option of defining what kind of capacity limits you've got. So is it based on the number of people or the number of machines? Is there a cost method that we're going to use? Are there any overheads that you need to consider? which machines you might be using at each of these stations and where it might be used. So I can see this soldering station is used on 2 separate bill of materials. If I just compare that very quickly with my assembly station, once again, I can look at potentially overheads. And in this particular example, I put some overhead costs based on some admin costs that I'm allocating at just a fixed factor, as well as some floor space costing, which I'm doing based on the labor cost. So a broad brush approach of the different things you can add from an overhead perspective. So it is not just about materials and labor, but also any overheads, machining or tooling costs that you might have. If I have a look at my tools here to do some of this, I've also got some additional costs that I'm incurring from the soldering components, so I can track that against this process also. If any one of these operations was outsourced, there is the option of selecting this as an outside process and who that supplier might be, and the ability to create supplier orders as a result of that, with a full audit trail of where everything is up to in the process. Okay, so let's jump into an existing sales order that I've got partway entered to save a little bit of time. So as I said, this sales order could come in simply by someone entering it, like I have, or through the customer portal. Alternatively, it could have also come through from the API from an e-commerce provider. So I've got AC Equipment. They're trying to purchase 5 of these laptops. And I can see here very quickly that I actually don't have any available or on hand. And I can also see that down the bottom left-hand corner as well. Now, in the sales orders, depending on the item and the settings, there is the option of both having a make-to-order type item where I can mark for production, which is what I'll be doing in this situation. If this was a non-manufactured item, there is the mark for purchase order on the right-hand side also. Marking that for production does allow me to then hit my production order screen. If it's a separate task or separate user that might be doing the production order creation, there is a separate area we can go to for that also. But for speed, let's just go ahead and select production orders. So I can see that there's 5 that I need to make. If there were multiple production items on this list, I'd be able to see those also. So after creating those production orders, you will now see that they are linked. So right there, I can see the production number, and I can also drill into that from here as well, and look at my production order and where it's currently up to. If I was to swing back to my dashboard screen, or maybe just straight to the production orders available or open, we do have the option of planning production orders, so putting in dates, scheduling those, and so on, and those can be entered or created automatically via MRP or potentially via the sales order demand process. So this particular production order is for 5 because, of course, that was what was required from the sales order. And I won't go through all the fields on this screen, but some of the key highlights that I like to point out. One is the references section. So even not just from the sales order side, but from the production order side, I can see which customer and which sales order this belongs to. We do have the option of having what we refer to as multi-level bill of materials. So if this was one of those, maybe a sub-assembly, which I'll be looking at a little later, this could show the link between the parent order there as well. If I take a look at my totals, I can see here the estimated labor, so 1 hour to assemble these 5 laptops, how much materials involved, what tooling costs, what's my overheads, and what is my unit cost once everything's said and done. So what we'll go and do is first take a look at what we call our critical material. So do we have enough stock to actually produce these laptops? I've hit show all items. I get to see that all the items, regardless of whether or not we're short or not. And you'll notice this quantity short column in the middle here is showing 0. So I have enough stock to make this. So I have all the materials as well as any of the sub-assemblies in the system as well. If I was short of any of these items, I do have up the top the ability to purchase, manufacture, or transfer from another warehouse the stock that I might need to complete this production order. Now, there are a number of ways we can proceed through a production order. There is the option of issuing materials as a separate step, printing a production ticket, which can go through the floor. But what we're going to do for the moment is release this production order to say, yes, we are ready to go. And I'm going to release the materials at this stage as well. So that will assign the materials required for this production order to the production order, so reducing inventory and increasing work in progress. Now, if I take a look at this, I do have a few options available to me. So what's required, what's released so far, and what's available. I don't have to release everything in one go. I can do partial releases if required. But for today's demonstration, we'll just head on through by selecting all of the components. Okay. If there was any lot or serial number tracking at a component level, which I haven't got on this bill of material, then I do have the option of selecting that as part of this process also. So if I take a look at my production order and have a look at my totals, we'll now see that part of my materials have been allocated. So this was a 2-procedure bill of material. So I've only allocated the materials for the first procedure so far. Hence, there's quite a bit still sitting in a variance and what's currently sitting in work in progress. Now I'm going to spend most of my time doing actions directly from this screen because it is the quickest and easiest option from a demonstration perspective. But each of the actions do have their own menu items. So if someone is just doing what we refer to as moves, they can use that screen. If you're just issuing materials or just entering labor, you can hit the labor or clock entry options as well. So the idea behind the steps, or what we refer to as moves within MYOB Advanced Manufacturing, is that because we have those 2 operations within the bill of material, we are going to move parts or potentially completed items from one operation to the next. So if I hit create move, what this is allowing me to do is say, for starters, how many am I moving? So we're making 5, but potentially if I'm a multi-employee production line and you wish to do real-time tracking, then you could potentially do one at a time or in batches, whatever makes the most sense for your manufacturing environment. So this is me saying I've finished my 5 from operation 10, or potentially, just for an example, we're going to say we've done 3 so far. And then I'm going to let you see exactly where everything is up to as we proceed through this production order. The real key within MYOB Advanced Manufacturing is it can be as simple as you need it to be, or as complex as your business grows. If I was to come ahead and look at what we refer to as our production detail screen, this will look very similar to the bill of material screen we were looking at just before, but there's a few extra columns. So I can see the soldering station. We needed to make 5. We've made 3 so far, and there's 2 outstanding. And so 3 of them have made it to the assembly station, and we're now up to that part of the process. So once I finish all 5 of the soldering station, the status will update for that individual operation. Once again, giving you a clear visibility of exactly where everything is up to. So let's go ahead and move those last 2 by just creating another move. You can create as many moves as you need to get these items through your operations. These moves can also be done as part of the clock on, clock off entry, both through the mobile phone app or the clock entry screen through the browser. So as we're progressing through, I can now see that all of my materials have been assigned. I've so far done 5 hours worth of labor. Some of the overheads have been incurred, and so my work in progress is really starting to build up. So we're going to do that last assembly step, and so I'm just going to do a move for all 5 at the same time. And I'm going to get a couple of warnings. Deliberately won't enter the fields I need to, just to highlight them to begin with. So if I hit save here, it is telling me that this particular bill of material requires what's referred to as an attribute. So I've gone in and said that I can pick a different case color for my laptops. This could have also been selected in a previous or earlier step. So maybe these laptops are going to be in blue. In addition, this is a serial tracked item. So if I do have a look at my allocation screen, you'll notice that I've got 5 items, and I can generate these serial numbers as part of this process as well. So I can see that my serial numbers are 289 to 293. So because this was a 2-operation bill of material, and I'm just doing my move or my final move on the last operation, what you will notice is that my production order changes to completed, and I can see what my actuals are. So I haven't changed the labor and all the materials, so no real surprise, I'm matching my planned total. However, if I was using clock on, clock off options, then my labor would be a little bit more quote unquote accurate, and there might be a little bit of variance there as well. And if I was using different types of raw materials, which I'll be looking at in my second scenario, we can track the material cost changes there also. If I was to swing back, so I've finished making my goods, if I was to swing back to that sales order that we were looking at just a moment before, to AC equipment, I've finished my production, I've made my 5 laptops, and if I look at my allocations, I can see the 5 lot or serial numbers that we had entered on the production order have automatically been allocated. So this particular sales order is good to go. We can then proceed through either creating a shipment or using our quick process to go straight through from shipment through to invoice. So that is the make to order scenario where I didn't have any of the computers in stock and I made them specifically for a sales order that came into the system. So we're going to jump into a slightly different scenario. And this particular example, we're going to go with something I'm a big fan of, which is ice cream, and have a look at how I've got this particular example set up. So if I go ahead and look at one of my bill of materials, which in this example is some strawberry ice cream, one of my favorite flavors. I have been asked why I didn't select chocolate ice cream. I believe that's a more popular flavor, but I'll go with my preference for today's demonstration. So this example I've got set up goes through a slightly different set of steps. For starters, I've got one of my items at this mixing station being what I refer to as, or what we refer to as a phantom bill of material, which we've called base mix. So depending on what flavor, I've got chocolate in my system, but chocolate and strawberry ice cream in here, that they have a lot of the same ingredients. And as a result, I've got a base mix, which if those ingredients change on a more global scale, I do have the option of doing that in a single place. So I have a single source of truth. And so in this particular example, I'm just selecting the base mix and adding strawberries. If I was to look at that base mix item and have a look at my manufacturing tab, I do have the option of seeing what the default bill of material might be, and once again, some of these other features that we were looking at or can look at about whether it's a make to order or an MRP item and how we happen to replenish this. So if I was to go have a look at the bill of material for the base mix, which is the same, what we refer to as phantom bill of material for both chocolate and strawberry, I can see that's made up of some cream, some milk, some sugar, and some magic. Okay, so it's a similar kind of scenario once we get to the actual production orders being generated, also once they're generated. But if I take a look on my material requirements planning, the idea behind this is we can generate forecasts. So you might have some planned seasonality that you need to take in mind. That is an option as part of this. You can have a master production schedule that you can use as part of your MRP. Alternatively, like I'm using today, I'm using my min-max quantities and reorder points as well as sales demands. We then have two key screens that I'll spend a bit of time in MRP. One is what we call MRP exceptions, which I'll start there. MRP exceptions will go through and tell me all of the items that we have or potentially orders that we have in the system that we either have made or need to make, and a bit of a status or type. So I can see here that there's some late orders. So some of these items I actually needed already, so it's a bit late to make the order. So that does give me an option to potentially talk to suppliers and decide whether or not things need to be expedited, or whether or not, if this was an potentially imported item, I could get it locally. If I look at my MRP display, and I'll focus on two main record types to begin with. First one is items that we are manufacturing. So I can see that some of these items have a type of safety stock. So I have 2-litre tubs of strawberry ice cream, which I need to have at least 500 tubs at all times. So that's telling me that I need to create a manufacturing or production order for those 500 tubs. You'll also see that I've got to make some strawberry ice cream mix, so what we were looking at before, with an MRP, and that's based on an MRP requirement. So that is looking at the fact that I have 500 2-litre tubs, i.e. 1,000 litres, and I need to make the mix to fill those tubs. In addition to that MRP requirement, that also needs to apparently have 500 litres in stock at all times. So I'm not going to go through and manufacture all these, but that does give you a bit of a view of how MRP will tell you what to manufacture. If I have a look at the purchasing source, that will come through and tell me I'm actually also short on strawberries. So I do have the option of simply ticking the box and hitting purchase, or coming into the manufacturing items and selecting manufacture. So we'll go ahead and create that production order. Now, if I was creating those production orders on a more real-time or daily basis, and there were some time constraints on those, then potentially we could be looking at using that same critical materials feature that we used in the first scenario, even on the one we just selected. But this one's being a bit more planned out. So we're going to have a look at purchasing those strawberries through this screen as part of the MRP requirements. If you do have multiple warehouses, you do have the option of having what we refer to as a transfer source. So you can transfer stock maybe from a centralized warehouse if required. This particular item has a preferred supplier and a number of rules. This is telling me I need 120 kilograms of strawberries. So we'll go ahead and create that purchase order. And that has reduced my list. Okay, so if we go back to our production order maintenance screen, and look at the production orders that we currently have planned, we'll now see that I've got some base mix, some 2-litre ice cream tubs, and this strawberry base mix. So we're going to just focus on the strawberry base mix for the moment, rather than every single item there, and go through a couple of the features that we didn't touch on in the first scenario. So if I was to go and release this order, so we're good to start. We're going to add this to our production run, and I will just double check to make sure whether or not we've got any material shortages. So of course we do. We've got that purchase order that we've already created, so that will already be in the system, and we can look at then just receiving that. So to do a purchase receipt, it's a pretty simple process. I simply come into my purchase receipt screen. Now we do have the option as part of this process to also include at any stage a lot of serial tracking. So being that this is a food product, it's fairly common for lot or batch numbers to be a requirement. You can do it at any one of the levels or layers within the bill of material or components. So we'll go ahead and look at that purchase order apologies, we didn't actually send that purchase order off to the supplier. We'll just have a quick look at that one there. So we do see the 120 kilos of strawberries. It was put on hold. There's different options available to as part of MRP, but I can see that's on hold, so I'll take that off. We do have the option of both printing, obviously, and emailing the purchase order to the supplier, and we're going to go ahead and receipt these goods into the system. If the invoice came with the goods, we can create the bill at the same time. We're going to just skip over the AP side of this process as we continue to focus on the manufacturing components. So now that we have all of our goods, we can take a look at our strawberry base mix that we are in the process of making. 1,000 litres. I don't know how long it would take me to get through that much ice cream, but I'd give it a red hot go. So we'll go ahead and do some material releasing. So what you'll notice on this screen that you may, those with the keen eye may not have noticed or seen on the bill of materials screen, is that we're making the strawberry base mix, but you'll see that it still has the cream, the sugar, the milk, and the magic that has come through from that phantom bill of material. So just because there is a sub-assembly component does not mean you need to create multiple production orders, albeit you can. In this scenario, we're going to add them all at the same time. So I've got some of these items that do require lot or serial numbers. So if I come in here to the milk, for example, I can see that I have 2 serial numbers or lot numbers and various expiry dates. So I'm going to go ahead and use the oldest first. And I'm going to do the same thing with the cream. Now, not all of my items are lot tracked. I've only done it with the dairy products in this particular example. But what this does allow us to keep track of what this does allow us to keep track of is which lot numbers were used in which production orders. So that does give you a full traceability. If your supplier was to get in contact with you and say that this particular full cream milk had some issues with it, you could see which production orders that lot number was used in, and then which sales orders that was shipped to, reducing the potential recall requirements that you might have as part of that process. Okay, so we've issued our materials. The main difference obviously between the previous example being those lot numbers. And if I take a swing back to my production order and look at my totals, of course, I've just allocated my materials at this stage. So I can continue doing the move scenario or move process as we progress through. So I'm going to do the whole lot in one go. I'm not going to worry about doing partials, but similar to the previous step, that is an option. Now, in my example, I've got it going through a mixing station and then it going through to a pasteurizing work center. And so once I've done my second and final move, it does give me the option of selecting or generating lot numbers. So if I come into my allocation screen, I can generate my next lot number. Now this could have been generated at a previous step, or I can simply enter it as part of the process. It's really up to you to decide what the most logical option is for your particular production run. Okay, and my final move. We'll go ahead and generate a lot number. This will then put 1,000 litres of that strawberry ice cream mix into my inventory. That can then be used in other production orders that might be used for putting it into various size tubs or potentially delivering straight to my office in Abbotsford. Okay, so that takes us through the two main scenarios that I wanted to get through as part of today's demonstration. So the make to order and make to stock type businesses. I'm quite happy to now open it to the floor, so to speak. So if you do have any questions, feel free to type them in the question section, and we will look at doing our best to answer them.
Okay, it looks like we've got a couple of questions already. Can your product buy materials in kilogram, pack and litres, sell in package, etc.?
Yes, so our inventory options within MYOB Advanced do allow for unit of measure and unit of measure conversions. So you do have the option of saying that an item might be stocked in litres or stocked in packs, and a pack is a certain number of kilograms, and maybe a pallet has 3 packs and so on. You can have as many unit of measure conversions as you wish.
Okay. Pricing options for raw material, costing, last, average, fixed, etc.
Yeah, I guess I'll take that one again. So from a costing perspective, each inventory item, you can define whether or not it is average cost, standard cost, first in, first out, or what we refer to as specific cost. So in the lot or serial tracking environment, it's quite popular to do specific costing. So that batch of ice cream that I just made would have had a specific cost assigned to it. So if I used that particular batch of the strawberry mix, that could use that specific cost.
Okay, and Grace, please feel free to chime in on some of these questions.
I'll try not to take up all of it.
This next question, I think, very similar to the first two that we've had. I work for a metal fabricator. We need to track material in different units of measure of length, and some of the components are supplied in boxes and sometimes pallets. Does it support multiple units of measure? I think that's very similar to the other one, isn't it?
That is.
Yeah, that's right. So as what Josh has mentioned, in MYOB Advanced, you can define and maintain any number of different units of measure to account for and express these quantities of the items. You can also define conversion rules so that for different units of measure of the same items, the system can calculate the prices of items to your specifications. In MYOB Advanced, you can also select base units of measure for weight and volume and set up the automatic calculation of weights and volumes for your sales and purchase orders.
Okay, great. What shop floor management systems do you support? Grace?
Yep, I can do that as well. The advanced planning and schedule part of the manufacturing edition provides you with ability to manage and monitor your shop floor schedule, which includes the following capabilities: finite capacity scheduling, rough cut capacity planning, monitor work center schedules and utilization, view machine schedule and utilization, and also allows you to have the clock on, clock off capability, which just show you briefly just then, to record shop floor activity along with barcode integration.
Okay. I think this one's aimed at you, Josh. We engineer and make to order, and there are often model changes during the production process. Is there support for version control?
There sure is. In two main components. So with our bill of materials, you do have the option of having multiple bill of materials for an item, which can also vary by warehouse. So in that particular example, I went with the ice cream. If you did have it multiple manufacturing plants that had different machines and different costs, then they can actually have different bill of materials per warehouse. And as your bill of material may evolve, so you change your ingredients, you change your production processes, there is the ability to have revisions and track which revision was on which production order. And lastly, there is the option of on a individual production order, if you allow users to do this, you can edit the production order on the fly. A lot of organizations might decide to restrict that feature, but it can be quite handy for the more custom shop type environments where they might not know all of the materials that are going to be used in the process until you're partway through.
Right. Okay. Please feel free to add some more questions if you have some. I've got one more question on my list here. Do you have the capacity or the ability to forecast for finite capacity? I almost read infinite capacity there, so finite capacity. Josh?
I'll let Grace answer that one.
Okay, good.
Well, I've talked a lot.
Yes, as mentioned earlier, production orders can be scheduled and rescheduled, respecting the capacity and current load of work centers, the machine, the tools, and the availability of materials.
Right. Okay. No more questions, anyone? Please feel free. We've run out of questions at the moment, which means either we bored you silly or Josh did a great job of covering everything that people want covered.
If you are into, obviously we went through a couple of scenarios that were more, I'd say, traditional manufacturing, so making, whether it's make to order or make to stock, still repetitive type bills of materials. If you are a business that is a bit more custom, so each bill of material that you have from a client is slightly different, you do have the option of, with the product configurator and estimating tools, to create them a little bit more on the fly and do one-off type bill of materials. And if that is your type of business, then feel free to get in contact and we can organize a bit more of a tailored or specific demonstration. Those particular examples tend to be a little bit more, well, specific to the client, rather than being able to come up with generic ones like we have today.
Okay, we have got another question. It's not manufacturing specific, but what is the whole suite of features, GL, etc.?
That is a very broad question. Happy to answer it. MYOB Advanced is a true ERP or Enterprise Resource Planning solution. So obviously what we've today focused on is primarily the manufacturing modules, as well as the peripherals to that. And by peripherals, I mean inventory, sales orders, and purchase orders. We really needed to go through both of those, at least to a little bit of detail, to kind of talk through manufacturing. But it does have the full finance requirements, so general ledger, banking, accounts payable, accounts receivable. It has payroll, has CRM, has what we refer to as project accounting or construction. It has service management. There's quite a large, broad spectrum of requirements or features within MYOB Advanced, and everything I've just gone through or listed. I'm quite happy to organise a demonstration, if on your specific business, and tailor that appropriately. Obviously, in today's session, we're really doing a bit more of a shotgun approach, trying to cover as much or as many areas as possible, or as many businesses as possible. But really, where I see the real benefits of product demonstrations is getting to see your data, your scenarios in the system, because it really does make it a little easier. I don't know what the chances or odds are. Feel free to put it in the questions if you happen to make computers or ice cream. But happy to talk through or do a demonstration on any manufacturing business. Feel free to reach out.
Right. Okay. Unless we've got any more questions at this stage, I might wrap it up. Please feel free to email me directly if you have any questions, and I'll ensure that either Grace or Josh get back to you with the answers. I'd like to thank Grace Wong from MYOB to also joining us as a guest panelist today. Grace is a specialist at MYOB, industry specialist, so she has a wealth of knowledge, and we can tap into broader resources than we have here at STAR if anything is required. Josh is, as I said, our General Manager of Sales, but he's also our demo guru. So if you need something shown to you, if he can't show it to you, then there's probably very few people around that can actually do it, if anyone. A copy of the webinar today will be emailed to you within the next 24 hours. So hopefully you've got some value out of today. We appreciate your time and effort in coming up to listen to us talk and present. And please feel free to reach out over anything that we might be able to help you with. So thank you, and enjoy the nice rainy day we have outside.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye all.